Hey everyone, so I know I'm doing this again, and I literally just uploaded this just yesterday, in fact. Well, actually a couple days ago, but I just wanted to apologize to you guys now that I actually kind of made a big mistake on the deck profile itself. Apparently, I can't summon the new colorless at all. You need the original rainbow to summon it. I thought you needed the new one from the structure deck, but apparently no. You have to have the original rainbow in your main deck, and I didn't think about that. In fact, I kind of overlooked that little minor detail, so I apologize for that. Won't happen again. Next time I'll make sure I get the details correct. Anyway, yeah, this is going to be a re-upload on my Dark World deck. Um, I had to make one minor adjustment, so again, thankfully there weren't too many views to begin with, so I figured, you know what, let's just delete the previous video and just do it again. And this time, I'll make sure to be extra thorough this next time around. Anyway, so the deck is pretty much the same as I had it before. It's 40 cards. Again, just one minor change in the extra deck, but you know what? For those who haven't seen the video anyway yet, figured, just go and give you guys the full description of this deck, and let's get started. So yeah, main deck is 40 cards, starting off with 2 copies of Grapha. Definitely my favorite of the bunch. If this card is discarded, you can target one card your opponent controls and pop it. It also has the effect where if it's discarded by an opponent's card effect, you can target one card in their graveyard, special summon it to your side of the field. One thing about Dark Worlds is yeah, they all have effects if they're discarded and sent to the grave. They all have an effect, and they'll get a bonus effect if they're discarded by your opponent's card effect. Usually that's not going to happen too often, but there are ways you can kind of manipulate this to your advantage, which we'll get into momentarily. But moving on. Going to be running 2 copies of Rainbow. You could run this at 3 if you wanted, and maybe bump Grapha to 1, but I always like the 2 and 2 ratio. To me, it just works better this way, especially because, Rainbow searches out any level 5 or higher Dark World monster except itself, and there are other cards I played to just float into that. Also, the thing about Grapha and Rainbow is that they have a summoning condition where, well, for Rainbow, you have to target one level 7 or lower Dark World monster back to your hand to special summon this card. And Grapha can bounce back any Dark World monster back to your hand to special summon itself from the grave. And keep in mind, this is not an effect, this is in fact a summoning condition. So even if your opponent, let's say, activated the effect of Abyss Dweller, you can still summon these guys from the graveyard, because again, they're not effects, they're summoning conditions. And they're not once per turn, so you can basically spam the hell out of this, which is why these two are so broken as they are. But anyway, yeah, Rainbow is just great for, the fact that it just searches out any level 5 or higher Dark World monster. Which actually one of our prime targets is going to be Silva. And if we already opened up with Silva, you can just search out Grapha. Silva, if it's discarded, special summons itself from the grave. Also, if it's discarded by an opponent's card effect, you get to rip 2 cards out of their hand and shuffle it back into the deck, which, if you think about it, is even worse than sending it to the grave, because, and I mean worse in a good way, by the way, because, we're in a form where, graveyard effects are reliant. And if the fact that, since, they don't go to the grave, they go back to the deck, your opponent gets no value, and they're short on hand advantage. And of course, these are not once per turn effects, so yeah, Silva is pretty busted. I always like to try to perform the hand loop as best as I can, just so, I always have that edge over my opponent, because, yeah, less cards you have, the harder it is going to be to break the board, Next, 3 copies of Genta. This is one of your main starters. You discard this to search out the field spell. And if this card is special, it can only be special summoned once per turn, but if it's banished, you can special summon it. So, yeah, Genta is pretty nuts. Next up, 3 copies of Snow. Pretty much your main searcher. If it's discarded, you search out any Dark World card. So that is relevant that it says card. So, yeah, pretty good overall. And, of course, I wish they fixed the text in the structure deck, but nope, it's still as convoluted as before. But, yeah, if this card is discarded by your opponent's card effect, you can then special summon... you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it, if any, in face-up defense position. So, yeah, it's not too bad. Again, you're mostly just going to use this for the search. And finally, 1 copy of Ceruli. This is the card that enables you to perform the secondary effects of these Dark World monsters. So if this card is discarded, it special summons itself back to your opponent's side of the field this time, which then it will force you to discard a card. And since it is an effect that your opponent activated, technically speaking, yeah, it's pretty nasty. And it also makes Triple T live immediately. Also a great way to, avoid cards like Infinite Impermanence, since, they're already going to have a card on their side of the field. So, yeah, Ceruli is pretty cool. And that pretty much rounds up the Dark Worlds. Now moving on to the Danger package. Running 2 Nessie. I was running 3 originally, but I just felt like 2 was enough, because yeah, you don't want to go too much into the danger since, you can only resolve each effect once per turn. Thankfully, the reveals are not once per turn, so I mean that does come in, that does help a lot, 2 Bigfoot. It's a level 8 and also pops a card on your opponent's or monster on your opponent's side of the field. So yeah, it's really great for spot removal. 2 Mothman. It's basically Dark World dealings. 1 Thunderbird, probably my least favorite one. I just run it for the name and for the fact that it is also a level 8 monster. So yeah, like it comes up. And yeah, every now and then, if you happen to be able to pop a spell and trap, that's great too. But it sucks, like, if you hard open with this card and then your opponent discards this and they have nothing to target, yeah, that's the only times when Thunderbird's just not that good. 1 Chupacabra, 1 Jackalope, and finally 1 Kabio Snake. These are all great cards in their own right. Chupacabra, kind of situational too, kind of like Thunderbird, but at least it offers better value, especially if one of your dangers is already in the graveyard. If it's discarded, you can special summon one of them back, so it's not too bad when it comes up. Plus, it's a Fiend monster, so that actually helps out with cards like the Gates of Dark World field spell. Since, you can just banish it and then discard another Fiend. Or if this card is in your hand, you can just discard that instead and then get some additional value off of that too. So, yeah, overall, not too bad. And for my only non-engine cards, 1 copy of Salamander Catalyzer. You reveal another Fiend monster. Special summon either with this card or the other card, and then you discard the other one. So you mostly just discard the Dark World card, special summon this. It's a great extender, and then again, it just offers you extra value because you get to discard one of your Fiends. So, and it does trigger off the Dark World effects too, so that's pretty nice. And then, of course, 1 copy of Zephyros, another powerful extender, bounces back any card you have as long as it's face up. So, like, you can even bounce back your Gates of Dark World and special summon this card. Of course, you have to take damage, but I mean, that really doesn't hurt you too bad. Again, you're just mostly using this as extenders because this deck is all about searching cards, drawing cards, and just like, it just combos off like crazy. Next up, 3 copies of Gates of Dark World. I love this card because it's a soft once per turn, not a hard once per turn. So yeah, you banish a Fiend, discard a Fiend, draw a card, and again, you just trigger off more Dark World effects this way. And yeah, there's not much more I need to talk about it. This card's just busted. 1 Dark World Archives. This card's also pretty nuts. You only need 1 because, you can easily search this out or draw into it, one or the other. During the main phase, you can discard a Dark World monster. And of course, it does this power boost effect, but the secondary effect is the one that really matters. If a monster whose original type is a Fiend is discarded by hand by the effect of a Dark World card or by an opponent's card effect, even during damage step, you can discard 1 card, draw 2 cards, and yeah, that basically enables you to just draw more cards. And keep in mind, it can include itself too, because it is an effect of a Dark World card. So yeah, Dark World Archives is pretty nuts. 1 Accession. This is basically the fusion spell. And the crazy thing about this is that you can either banish the materials, or if you're summoning a Dark World monster, you can just discard the materials. So like you discard Grapha and any other Fiend, you get the Grapha Overlord. So yeah, it's really cool. I really like what the Dark Worlds just do overall. 1 Puppetry. I like it for the fact that it's basically a 3-in-1 DD Crow that's searchable. So, and again, you discard Fiend monsters just to get value. So that's the best thing about it. The last thing I'm playing for the Dark World cards, or spells at least, is Dark Corridor, which technically this card is not a Dark World card, which is sad because it'd be nice if this card was actually searchable, but it's not. Like if it was called Dark World Corridor, yeah, this thing would be crazy, but unfortunately it's not. But you add a Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, and then you discard a card, which is really good. It's just Rhoda, but again, unfortunately, the downside of this card is that it's not a Dark World card technically, and it's also a hard once per turn. So I feel like 1 is more than enough, because most of the time I either draw into it or hard open with it anyway, so like, and plus there are ways to just like dig deeper into your deck anyway. That's generally what this deck does. So yeah, 1 Dark Corridor should be enough. Don't go bothering playing this at 3, because again, it can be pretty bricky at 3, so yeah, 1 is more than enough. For my non-engine spells, 3 Allure Darkness. My deck's primarily dark, so why not? 2 Triple T and 1 Called By, and finally 1 Card Destruction. And the only trap I'm playing is the Dark World Punishment. It's just Solemn Warning for Dark Worlds. So I was thinking like, you know what, a little stun card just to throw my opponents off. It's not too bad. And plus, if I happen to discard this for any reason, I do have a card that just helps me reset it. So yeah, Dark World Punishment is pretty good. For the extra deck, the only fusion I'm running is the one Grapha Dragon Overlord. It's great for disruption. So like, yeah, as long as you chain this correctly, you basically make it so your opponent's effect is turned into where they have to discard one card. So yeah, this card's pretty nuts. And if it leaves the field, you basically get to bring back the original Grapha. So like, it has like a lot of value to it. One Muckcracker, you know, definitely just generic Fiend support. And again, just triggers off your Dark World cards because the discard's not for cost, but by an effect. One Dark, Bestial still exists, so like definitely a good utility card to have. And it also helps you offer up some, you know, additional follow plays. One Akasha, this basically helps me recycle the Ceruli as long as I position it in the correct zone. And yeah, just a way for me to abuse the Ceruli Silva combo a little bit more. One SP Little Knight, if you don't have access to this, you'd probably play a Cross Sheep or something. So like, yeah, Cross Sheep would work too. So like, SP is just like a good option, but if you can't afford it, there are other budget alternatives, you know. One IP, one Nightmare Unicorn. Nightmare Griffin's pretty solid in this deck, especially because, you know, it's basically a skill drain sort of deal, so long as you, but it only works if your opponent's monsters, or rather if monsters are not linked. So like, as long as they're like within the arrows, then they should be fine. But if they're not, then that's the only times where the effects will be negated. But for me, it doesn't hurt me too badly because like most of my effects activate and result in the graveyard. So, and if I can just kind of keep my opponent off link arrows, yeah, Nightmare Griffin's just busted in that regard because like, yeah, it just annoys the hell out of everyone. And again, as long as you position it correctly along with any other link monsters, so like right under Muckcracker, for example, that's usually going to be like the best way to use it. One star, you just Skull Dread, you know, just to fix the hand. And it's pretty easy to spam monsters in this deck, so like you should be able to get 4 different names just to get the draw 4 to like put back whatever you don't need. One Appaloosa, also an easy monster to bring out because again, this deck is just crazy at spamming monsters. I decided to switch the colorless for Axis Code Talker because, you know, it's like, you know what, let's play a card that can just clear boards, it gets big, and if you sub it off of IP, you know, it just has that built-in protection. And then one Underworld Goddess, you know, figured why not, it's basically a kaiju, so yeah, it's pretty strong too. And then for the rank 8s, one number 38, one Dingirsu, it's actually supposed to be number 90, but I figured, but I don't have any copies of 90, and I figured, you know what, Dingirsu works just as good, so why not? And of course, the Coach King Giant Trainer. Really glad this got a reprint in the Fire King structure deck. So, yeah, basically a draw 3. You can also, you know, burn your opponent for damage, so it's good for time, of course. All right, so that's it for the extra deck. Now for the side deck. The side deck's pretty self-explanatory. If I'm going second, I'm still playing 3 copies of Lava Golem. Usually, there's a lot of decks that set up at least at minimum 2 monsters. So, yeah, that can come up. I'm also running 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet, a great going second card as well. If you wanted to main deck this too, you could, but I figured, you know, I was like, let's just side it out for now and then see how it goes. For like backward heavy strategies, you know, 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Same thing with the Eradicator Epidemic Virus. You know, I know Labyrinth is still a deck, so if you call traps, you know, you have to send all their traps to the grave. So yeah, Eradicator's pretty nuts. And finally, 3 copies of Skill Drain. I know some people think this is going to be the card that's going to go to 1 next. It might, I mean, but might as well just take advantage of it while it's still at 3, right? So, anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and just be sure to stay tuned for the Trap Tricks video when it comes out.